Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode on this channel. Today, we're getting to know Micah Goring, who is a candidate for Pennsylvania's 3rd District in the State House of Representatives. Thank you, Micah, for joining me today.
Thanks for having me on, Alex. I appreciate the opportunity.
So I was very excited for you to do this. Getting to know more local candidates. I live in Snyder County, Pennsylvania, so I'm hours away from Erie. But it's still very important to make sure that Republican candidates in the smaller elections, smaller races are definitely getting the knowledge, the recognition that they deserve. So you're an Air Force veteran, a father, a husband, a business owner. But tell me a little bit more about your background. What are some hobbies, other leadership positions, and then why did you decide to run for this office?
Yeah. Thanks for that very open-ended question. So my background is I grew up overseas. My parents started a church and translated the Bible, and I lived a lot of different places, mostly in Indonesia and the Philippines. And I graduated from high school in the Philippines, went to the Air Force Academy, and upon graduating the Air Force Academy, I was commissioned as an officer in the Air Force, stationed in Okinawa, Japan. After that, I was stationed in Washington, D.C., working on Bolling Air Force Base and the Pentagon. And it was while I was there in D.C. that I met my wife, who was from this little place called Erie, Pennsylvania. And part of that place, I don't mean to denigrate Erie with that, but I had not heard of it, growing up in Indonesia. And she'd grown up in Mill Creek, Pennsylvania. And so we started visiting family up here, and they had a little cottage on the beautiful Lake Erie, and I just absolutely fell in love with the place. So when my time in the Air Force was up, we are looking for a new start, and quite frankly, had grown tired of living in DC in the swamp,
Yeah.
and so we decided to move to Erie, be close to family, start our own family, start a business, start a new life.
Well, your upbringing in Indonesia and the Philippines must have had a unique impact on you. So, how did growing up in those environments shape your views and decisions to enter public service?
It definitely did. Of course, at the time, I didn't know any better and didn't know what it would be like to grow up anywhere else and grow up any other way. But what it did was instill in me a great love and appreciation for the values that formed America. And I was homeschooled for many years. My mom was very intentional in teaching me about American history. I remember in 4th grade memorizing the preamble to the Constitution. And so the things like that, the ideals and the values of America were very important to me. And growing up, seeing firsthand what it was like in countries where they didn't have that opportunity and that freedom. And so that made a big impact on me. I grew up loving America. I grew up American, obviously, but I think with a greater love and appreciation for it than I would have had I just grown here and taken everything for granted.
You mentioned that you graduated from the Air Force Academy, which I think is a beautiful campus. I'm sure it was beautiful back
It
then,
is.
all the
Yeah.
mountains of Colorado.
Yeah.
I love always following all the military academy football teams as well. So I always follow Air Force, Falcons.
Yeah.
I saw them play Army a couple years ago. But how has your military background influenced your approach to leadership and problem solving?
Yeah. So first off, in the Air Force Academy, I was lucky enough to get there when Fisher DeBerry was the coach of the football team, and all 4 years I was there, the football team did really well, and I think may have won a couple of bowls. But again, I didn't know any better, and I thought the Air Force Academy just had top 25 football team. And turns out that was not the case. They were not always that good. But I had a great run when we were there, and we had a lot of fun attending the games. But to your question about what I learned and how it's impacted me, one of the lessons, specifically with leadership, I learned at the Air Force Academy, it was that the linchpin of leadership is mutual respect. And I think, especially when we look at politics right now, a lot of our leaders have lost the respect for the people. And we're seeing in a lot of the headlines and just in everyone's feeling this loss of respect for our leaders as well, the institutions and these things that everyone used to respect. But that falls on the leadership. And it falls on the leader to show and establish mutual respect. And if we had that, I don't think we'd be in the position that we're in right now. And that's one thing, when people, um, especially when politicians think of themselves as public officials and better than the people that they're representing instead of public servants. That's when you lose that mutual respect, when you lose the respect for the people. I love the way a lot of European countries name their chief executive prime minister. And that's a direct impact of Jesus Christ, and his teaching, the last will be first and the first will be last. The prime minister is literally the first servant. And so everyone in public office is a public servant and ought to respect the people. And the fact that so many of them don't is how we've gotten to this place. And it shows, our country shows that we have a lack of leadership.
Yeah, and I can definitely see that in Pennsylvania, but across the country, we look up to politicians and not realizing like we're the people who put politicians where they're at. They're supposed to be, working for us, doing what we want. That's why we vote them in. You mentioned
Exactly.
you mentioned on your website that Pennsylvania, it has a spending problem, not so much a revenue problem. So could you elaborate on, specific areas where you believe the state is overspending and how you would adjust that once elected?
Yeah, thanks. That we certainly do have a spending problem. We saw the latest budget is the biggest we've ever spent. And I think, and education is one area that's near and dear to my heart. We're spending more on education now than we ever have. I think the number is $6.7 billion that we're spending. And it's a lot statewide. We're spending an average of $22,000 per student. And I get that not every district spends that much, but that's way too much. And nobody wants to shortchange our children. We all want our children to have a fair shot. But the fact is, a lot of school districts are failing. And so we need to give people an option. And the one thing throughout history, there's one thing that we've known that will drive down prices, improve products and services, and that's free market principles. That's competition. And so, especially in Pennsylvania, 70% of voters favor school choice. Let's get school choice. Let's bring in free market principles. Let's bring in some competition. Let's let entrepreneurial problem solvers figure out how to solve this problem, because it's not one size fits all. Everyone has a different learning style. And yeah, especially with boys, to force them to sit down and listen to lectures for 8 hours a day is just not going to fly. And so we need different options. We need problem solvers to have the freedom to take a look at it and take a shot at trying something new and give our children the best shot at success going into the future.
So going back to an earlier like conversation we just had about public servants and how we, the people, elect politicians, how would you would plan to stay connected with your constituents, ensure that their voices are being heard, town halls, phone calls, things like that? What do you have up your sleeve that you would like to do?
Yeah, the system is designed especially for representatives to stay in their community. That's why the elections are every 2 years. It's not it's not designed for representatives to spend all of their time in Harrisburg and Philadelphia and yucking it up with the big shots in those big cities, unless they're from that area, and then they should be there. But yeah, I'm thinking especially of my representative right now, who I'm running against. He spends most of his time in those two places. It's designed for representatives to stay here in their home districts for as much time as they possibly can, and to be as involved in the community as everybody else is. And so that could be something as simple as here in Erie. I'm not sure about your county, but in Erie County, we have all kinds of free public concerts all summer long. It's absolutely amazing. And if you're watching this and you're not from Erie County, you should come up and see it. But between the concerts and the fairs and all that kind of thing, just being out there like a regular person, because guess what? As a representative, you still are a regular person.
Right.
And so, to be involved in the day to day activities that everybody else is involved, that's how the system is designed. So you don't lose touch with reality, you don't lose touch with your community. And so that's really what it is. And yes, they have opportunities through town halls, through events, I'll plan on having fairs for various constituents and veterans and seniors and that kind of thing. And we'll come up with some new ideas that haven't been tried either that we'll unveil after the election and after I get sworn in. But I think the main thing is continuing to be a regular citizen, just like I have been, and going to community events just like a regular person, because that's what I am.
Right. I definitely love to see that because I got to know my current state representative, David Rowe, in Snyder County. He just the other day we had a Snyder County night out, so the national night out that all people across the
Yeah,
country do.
yeah,
He was there, shaking hands with everybody, just having
yeah,
fun. Not just so much being a politician, but just having fun, being a regular person.
yeah,
I got to know him, of course, since I moved up here. He's always involved with local politics,
right,
just out in the community. So that's very important. Just to show the voters, show the people your face. Definitely important.
yeah.
Where I grew
Yeah,
up,
be
I didn't.
accessible, let
Yeah,
people ask questions, take the difficult questions. And we're going to disagree on some things, but clarity is more important than agreement.
yeah. And when I grew up, I couldn't tell you who my state representatives. Now, of course, I could have just looked it up, but it's not
Right.
as popular. It wasn't as popular where I grew up. He
Yeah.
focused more on just Harrisburg, focused more on just
Mm,
politics, but definitely the person
yeah.
I have now is definitely good with that. So that's why I want to
Every
add that
place is better.
question. That's why I want to
Yeah.
include that question today. But you seem like you're gonna
Yeah.
have that down pat. Um, so America, Pennsylvania, we're very divided lately. So how are you do plan to work with other legislators? I feel like politics hurts us now when it comes to like, especially the U.S. House. We're very divided where it actually could hurt the American people. People don't want to vote because they don't want to betray, let's say Donald Trump. Republicans don't want to betray Donald Trump by voting for this. Democrats don't want to betray whoever. So I feel like
Mhm.
we're just so divided. How do you plan on just working with other legislators, both within your party and across the aisle, to achieve your goals and America's goals and Pennsylvania's goals?
Yeah. Yeah. And my constituents' goals for Mill Creek and
Right.
Fairview. So two things. One would be what I mentioned earlier, mutual respect and understanding that the 202 other representatives are individual people just like myself and deserve my respect. And two is a very real understanding that they have their own priorities. They have things that they're looking for. They're hopefully looking out for their constituents, but also being realistic that there's going to be a number of them who are looking out for themselves too. And I think being realistic about that, being shrewd, and understanding what their desires are, where we can give and take, and understanding that this can't be um, I don't want to say get your hands dirty. That sounds bad, but it can't be something where I go and I get everything that I want. I understand that that's not going to happen. There's going to be some give and take. And there has to be, willingness to work with people who are reasonable and willing to put the people first.
So now we're closing some questions now. I already mentioned that, how do you plan on involve the community, but what exactly is your long-term vision for Erie County? Then I mentioned also just how do you plan to involve the community in achieving that vision, but you mentioned touching on a lot of that earlier, but what is just your long-term vision for Erie County?
Long-term vision for Erie would be a place where people can live in peace and prosper and largely be unbothered by bureaucrats who want to control every single aspect of their lives. And I think that's what the vast majority of people want, except for a very small selection of our population that seems to want to be involved in everybody else's business. But I think most people want to live their own lives and want to be largely unbothered by everyone else. They want opportunities, and I want to free things up so that problem solving entrepreneurs can continue to make Erie a great place to live and that we have economic opportunity for my kids and grandkids to want to stay here. I think it's very important for young people to go see the world and see what else is out there. The area is a great place to raise families, and I want to protect that. I want to continue for it to be a great place to raise families and to have multiple generations here. To do that, we need economic prosperity and we need freedom for people to be able to do that.
So just out of curiosity, I never been to Erie, of course, but of course, big thing everyone thinks about is Lake Erie. I'm sure you've
Yeah.
been there. how is that like? Is that like, do they have a lot of waves? Is it a nice beach? I was never there. Did people treat it like a beach since they're farther away from of course, the
Yeah.
New Jersey beaches and things like that?
Right. Yeah. Right in my district, we have Presque Isle, which is 13 miles of beautiful beaches. And it's a huge tourism draw. It's absolutely gorgeous. And it's a great place. I have a kayak. I love kayaking there. We have a lot of sportsmen, anglers go out, and there's a lot of great fishing. It's one of the best steelhead fisheries in the world. And so it's an absolute great place to be outdoors. One point I want to bring up is that my opponent and all of the Democratic representatives in Erie County voted to put 10,000 acres of industrial sized wind turbines in Lake Erie. So these are the mega size, the gigantic 15 megawatt industrial wind turbines. That would be an absolute eyesore.
Yeah.
And who knows what impact they would have on the fisheries. They would almost certainly kill Canada geese and bald eagles and any other kind of big birds of prey. And I think just an absolutely disastrous thing if we were to actually allow that to happen. And so that's one thing that I'm campaigning very hard to stop.
Well, yeah, I definitely support you on that then. I didn't know that was the thing that was happening. I
Yeah.
love, of course, nice views. I live on the Susquehanna River. And of course, if there was
Yeah.
wind turbines or something blocking that on my way to work or something every day, that'd be terrible.
Yeah. Everybody loves looking out on water. Yeah. It's one of those unifying things about humankind.
So, last question of today is just what do you believe that the GOP needs to do to start winning again? We really have not, and this is a broad question, not so much localized to you.
Yeah.
But we have not really won a big election since 2016, especially in Pennsylvania, since we voted for Biden in 2020, and we lost both the governor race and the U.S. Senate race in 2022. On top of that,
Yeah.
the Democrats also hold the state house, so that of course applies to you. Just what do we need to do to start winning again? Do we need to shift a message? Do we need to, draw in other people? What do we need to do?
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking about that because you mentioned that you would ask that question. And yeah, I'm not a politician. I guess technically I have been since January or February, whatever it was. So I don't know how much I can advise the GOP. I'll leave that to the people who are smarter about this kind of thing than I am. But just a couple of observations that I had just recently, especially looking back at the governor race that we have and what's happening now at the presidential level. So one thing would be to be likable people, be the kind of people that other people like and want to be with, and that just means being friendly and personable. Doesn't mean compromising your values. It just means treating other people with respect and putting a smile on, greeting people with a smile, just being likable and friendly, I think would go a long ways. But what I do want to advise, or I guess encourage fellow conservatives, is to be more involved. Yeah, if we really believe in and if we want to keep a government of, by, and for the people, we need to get back involved and volunteering in something, anything. Um, whether it's the American Legion, the VFWs, the Lions Club, volunteering at the homeless shelter, these kinds of things. It's easy, especially now with inflation the way it is, and families need both mom and dad to work. So it's easy to get caught up in that in sports and not have any time. But doing those kind of things, volunteering for those organizations, helping out the homeless, those are the kinds of things that will relieve some of the pressure on government, that will relieve some of the demand on government. So we don't have this pressure to provide all of these services through the government. And we can provide it through much more caring options, through a loving volunteer who is going to treat, like I see this with my wife, she volunteers and helps the homeless. She's far more kind and loving than a bureaucrat who goes by the rules and says, no, the rule book says we can't do that. Whereas a volunteer organization can do whatever it takes to help a human being in need and make sure that a 6-year-old child isn't sleeping in the snow on the streets of Erie. So that kind of thing, human beings getting involved as conservatives who take this seriously and rightly say that the government is not the place for everything. Well, we need to get involved and we need to provide those services outside of the government.
Well, I definitely agree with both points. To address your first point, of course, I agree. We need to, stop at the personal attacks. But people, and people, unfortunately, it's starting to go down the route where people care more about a personality of a president
Right.
or a governor than their actual
Yeah.
policies. We see that with Trump, of course. Everyone
Right.
doesn't like Trump because, well, of what he says. I prefer
Right.
his policies than what he says
Yeah.
and mean tweets. And same things goes for Republicans hating Democrats for the same reason. So
Yeah.
we really need to mature a lot more in politics.
Right.
And to your second point, I always say, you can't complain if you don't vote. You can't complain if you're not getting involved. With Little League baseball, I always say like people arguing at the umpire, fans arguing at the umpire. What are you out there? You know what I mean? What have you done to
Right.
volunteer? What have you done to help? So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's what I always
That's a
say.
great
Don't
example.
complain if you don't
Yeah.
vote.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point, Alex.
And it brings up another quick question. Mail-in ballots, of course, are very controversial in among the Republican Party. I think that's a very important thing that we need to take advantage of because if we can't change anything unless we're in power, we have to be empowered to change these rules. But to begin
Right.
with, I think mail-in ballots are still, regardless, a good
Right.
option. Truck drivers could take advantage of it, nurses, healthcare workers. I think we got to take advantage of the mail-in ballots. What would you say to people who doubt the mail-in ballots, call it rigged, and all that other stuff?
Yeah. Yeah. I would say the best way to guarantee that your vote is not counted is not to vote.
Yeah,
And so if you want to guarantee that the candidate you like doesn't win, then don't vote. So yeah, mail-in ballots, there's lots of questions around it, but this is again an area where we need to deal with reality and not with what we want to be reality, but the way things actually are. And the way things actually are is mail-in ballots are legal according to the law right now. And we have to deal with that the way it is. And like you say, there are people who benefit from that, and so let's play the game based on the rules. Like the NFL, they change the rules all the time. And if you send your field out playing the rule book from 1982, you're going to lose because the rules have changed. So you got to play by the rules as they are, not as you want them to be. And yeah, we need to get out there. We need to get involved and make sure everyone votes.
yep. Can't complain if you don't vote. And another thing, another option for people is poll watching. I mean, if
Absolutely.
you're available that day, stop by your
Yeah.
local polling place and try to contribute everything you can. But I'm
Yeah,
looking
yeah, that's the
very
number one
excited.
thing I say to people who are question election integrity and all that. And it's free speech is a wonderful thing, and that's how we get to truth. And I encourage people to question the integrity of everything about government. But if you're concerned about election integrity, don't just go to poll watch. Go work in the elections, and
Yeah.
that's what I learned as a poll watcher is that I'm on the wrong side of this. I should have been in the office working the election and not being a poll watcher.
I'm excited to what Pennsylvania is going down. A lot of voter registration is what I should say. A lot of voter registration on the Republican side. Bucks County flipped a couple weeks
Yeah.
ago. Luzerne
Yeah.
County, a big county that is going to be flipping soon, hopefully by November. If not, it's definitely getting a lot close. So I'm happy
Mm.
with the way Pennsylvania is going, but it's still, I think, the most important state in this upcoming election. But of course, we got to take back the House and the State House as well. So that's why I'm really rooting for you. I really appreciate your time. I want to thank you once again for your time, and I wish you the best of luck in November. I'm really excited to see your name be called.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Alex. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I wish you the best of luck with your channel.
Thank you. And you want to real quick plug in your Facebook or where people could find you?
Yeah. My website is micah4pa.com, and Facebook, I think it's facebook.com/micah4pa. But if you look up Micah Goring for representative, you'll find me on Facebook. That's where I do most of my posting.
Hmm.
So yeah, follow me there and you'll see what we're up to.
Awesome. All right, everybody, make sure to check him out. Peace, everybody.
Thank you.